Welcome back to This Week in Film, the exciting fortnightly podcast where we get together and talk about the movies we saw over the past week. It's super special Nick's all by himself week. Matt is not here this week, and after last week where we went silent in memoriam for Ray's departure from the show, I'm back. Just me this week, and I'm going to try and talk for a while by myself. So this might go well, this may go just terrible, but we'll see. But Matt sends his regards, and he'll be back next week. So, getting right to it. What did I see this week in film? Oh, by the way, I'm Nick Penato. Thank you for joining me. So, then now that that's out of the way, what did I watch this week in film? Well, I finally got around to watching Batman: The Killing Joke. It's an animated film produced by Warner Brothers. It is directed by, let me click on this, by Sam Liu, L-I-U, Liu? I don't know. Directed by Sam, and this movie was not very good, which is a very big shame because it is based on the acclaimed 1988 book of the same title, Batman: The Killing Joke, which is written by Alan Moore and illustrated. I'm going to show my ability to read a Wikipedia page, illustrated by Brian Bolland. But Alan Moore wrote it, and it's a classic. It's a classic story. Tells the origin of his nemesis, the Joker, and just shows the Batman struggling to overcome his enemy, but also try to reach a common ground with him. And the movie and the book both start off with Batman visiting Arkham Asylum, where the Joker is in prison, and trying to sit down and have a conversation with him that a lot of people, I think, have imagined, where you think of, if I had a supervillain and he was in jail, I would just try to go talk to him. Maybe we could just sit down, clear things up, and go from there, rather than every 2 months beating the crap out of each other. It's a novel approach, and basically the Batman goes there. He finds out that the Joker has escaped, and the story goes from there. So at this point, I'm going to get into spoilers for the movie and the book. So at 3 minutes in? Oh man. At 3 minutes in, if you wanted to know what happens and you don't want it to be spoiled, now is the time to fast forward to the end of the show where I say goodbye. No. You could probably just turn it off. But if you want to hear me talk about all of the things that happen in the movie, stay tuned. All right, so that was your spoiler warning. I was told that, what movie did I do a couple weeks ago where I said, it was a space movie. Arrival. I did Arrival where I said, all right, spoiler alert, and then just dove right into spoilers almost immediately. So sorry about that. So you got a nice wind up for the Killing Joke spoiler alerts. But anyway, this movie was pretty disappointing. It features the voice talents of Kevin Conroy, who plays Batman. There's no Bruce Wayne in this movie. Well, I guess there is a little bit. You see him a little bit. But he plays Batman / Bruce Wayne. And he's the voice of Batman from the 90s cartoon, and to me is the voice of Batman. Whenever he is not Batman, I think it's very distracting. It also features Mark Hamill as the voice of the Joker, and again, he's who you think of when you think of the Joker. At least I do, and my opinion is final. And anyway, they're both brought back to do these famous roles. Mark Hamill famously said this would be his last time doing the Joker. In the past, he said, I'm trying to remember, but I think he said that doing the voice is taxing on his vocal cords, and he's not as young as he used to be, And he's got all the Star Wars movies that he's making now. So Batman goes to visit the Joker in prison. Joker has escaped, and that's where the comic book starts. The movie decides to take the position of what's the best way to say this? The movie decides to put Batgirl front and center of this movie. Batgirl is Barbara Gordon. I don't know what the actress's name who plays her in the movie. Let's take a look. Tara Strong. Oh, nice. Tara Strong plays Batgirl in the movie, and in the animated movie, they take the position of making her the main character of this story, and they add on this entire almost half-hour long prologue to where the actual story starts. And I think they did this for two reasons, which was to, if you've never seen Batman, or you don't know anything about it and you're just jumping in, you want to know, well, who is this girl? So, she's another Bat person. Oh, she's friends with him. They fight together, and apparently they bang now, which is a new thing. They get together and then they hook up, which is ridiculous on countless levels. And I think they're trying to bring some kind of emotional core to the movie, where you see this girl who has, her whole life ahead of her. She's a young girl. She works at a library at a college, and she's trying to, just figure out what's going on with her life. Is she a crime fighter? Is she a librarian? Does she want to be a Batman for the rest of her life, or a Batgirl for the rest of her life, kind of a thing? And at the same time, she's kind of in love with Batman. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all, because we don't care about Batgirl. In the comic book, the Batgirl's in the story for about 3 or 4 pages. The story itself in the comic is only like 50 or 60 pages long. And, like, Batgirl shows up in the book because she's having dinner with her dad. Her dad is Commissioner Gordon, like I said. And the Joker shows up at her door, and he just shoots her in the stomach, essentially paralyzing her. And that's where the character Oracle comes from. But in addition to paralyzing her, see, this is where things get confusing. There's a lot of things about this story that when you are reading it, apparently a lot of people interpret things one way, and other people interpret it another. For instance, I never thought, so the Joker, after he shoots Batgirl, he strips her naked and takes photographs of her while she's bleeding to death from, well, she doesn't die, but she's bleeding out from her wounds. And he later uses those pictures to show to Commissioner Gordon while he's trying to drive him insane. The Joker's plan in this story is his idea is that all it takes is one bad day to make someone like him. Because the Joker goes from being a regular guy to being a total lunatic. He goes from being a regular guy to turning into the Joker based on the events of one very bad day. So the Joker is trying to give Commissioner Gordon this same bad day, doing all these terrible, traumatizing things to him in order to drive him mad. Now, excuse me. Now, so I always thought that the Joker just took these photographs of Batgirl as a way to show Commissioner Gordon, hey, look what I've done to your daughter, and now I've stripped her naked and, in a sense, stripped her of all her dignity and all this stuff. But apparently a lot of people believe that he's also sexually assaulting her, which is even worse, But it makes the end of the movie all the more confusing, I guess, or the end of the story all the more confusing, because there's a big difference. Like, both things are reprehensible, but there's a big difference between just taking naked pictures of your gunshot victim to display to her father, which is horrible enough. And then on top of that, like sexually assaulting her and taking pictures of that. So at the end of the story, when Batman confronts the Joker, I have a big problem believing that he would go. I don't want to say he goes easy on the Joker at the end of the movie, but I have a hard time believing that the Joker would be able to speak at the end, even though he's done all these terrible things. So, but then there's another thing at the end. So anyway, where was I? This is tough. Congrats to all you people out there that are able to talk for forever. We're about 11 minutes in, and I am ready to be done talking. So, let's see. Where were we? So, the Batman, Batgirl hook up, and then she says, I don't want to be Batgirl anymore. And then the actual comic book starts. The comic book adaptation part of the movie starts. So, the comic book adaptation is it's very difficult to explain. Like they tried to go for the look of the comic book, which has this 80s style look to it. I mean, if you saw it, you would, and you read comic books, you might understand what I'm saying. But they tried to do it with a that modern cheap Warner Brothers animated movie feel. So I don't really care very much for all the newer Warner Brothers animated films. I don't think they're very good. I think they're all just disappointing, honestly. Some of them are better than others. I enjoyed Batman versus Robin the most of all lately, but for the most part, they all have this very inexpensive or cheap feel to them, where the animation feels stilted, where you can feel like they're cutting corners all over the place. And most of all, I think what really hurts this film is it sounds like all of the actors, and then this is probably normal for all animated features or productions at all, but it felt like all the actors were reading their lines separately from someone. Like, for instance, Kevin Conroy read all of his Batman lines all by himself, and then Mark Hamill came in the next day and read all of his Joker lines. And the problem is, it doesn't feel like any of these characters are actually talking to each other. It just feels like they're saying, here's what I have to say now. Now you will speak your lines. You know, like they're all being performed, but they're not being performed in concert with the people around them. And that really is annoying. You can hear that in other animated things. I don't have an example off the top of my head, but in most animated things, it's like that. All the actors record separately, but it doesn't feel like it. So I don't really know how to explain that too well, but let's take a look at the clock now. Oh, we're 14 minutes in, just getting warmed up. Let's see what else to talk about with the Batman. Batman wears a cape. Yes. Let's just get right to the end of the movie. So the end of the movie, Batman finds out that the Joker has shot Batgirl and taken Commissioner Gordon captive. He goes to confront the Joker where he is. He rescues Commissioner Gordon, who is being kept naked in a cage, possibly being sexually assaulted himself, being surrounded with the imagery of his wounded daughter. And Batman says, they found Barbara, which is the name of his daughter. I'll stay with you until the ambulance and the police get here. And Commissioner Gordon says, no, you go bring him in and do it by the book. He needs to know that our way works. It's very similar. It's very similar to the movie The Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale movie, where the Joker wants to make a point to Batman and all of Gotham that if when push comes to shove, society's a very fragile thing, and everything that we think of as being a civilization will go right out the window at the first chance we get. And in The Dark Knight, spoiler alerts for The Dark Knight, which is almost 10 years old now, which is crazy, isn't it? But in The Dark Knight, he says, or he puts a bomb on two boats, one boat full of just regular commuters, and another boat that is full of prisoners being transferred. And he gives each of them the opportunity to blow up the other boat. And it's very much in line with this movie, where if you push people to the limit, they're going to act in their own best interests and flat out and openly break the social norms that we have, or the social contract that we have, where if many of us will have a conversation where if we're ever put in a situation like that, I definitely wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't blow you up. But if push comes to shove, who knows what you'll actually do? You know, when your back's against the wall, who knows what's going to happen? And that's what the Joker does, is he puts these people in this position where Batman cannot stop it from happening. He can only takes down the Joker, but they both still have to sit and watch it happen. And that's what happens in this movie, The Killing Joke, where, Batman gets to Commissioner Gordon, and Commissioner Gordon is not broken. He doesn't fall for the Joker, but he doesn't fall prey to what the Joker was hoping would happen to him, which is he would go mad and lose his facilities and go for vengeance and basically violate all of the principles that he stands for. Now, granted, his principles include having a flying Batman as his primary enforcer of the law in his city, but, whatever works. But he tells Batman to bring the Joker in by the book, which is funny because Batman's a vigilante. But, they got their own thing. And so in that sense, the Joker fails in his goal. The other thing about this movie is it goes into the origin of the Joker, which I think is always a weird thing. In this movie, or in the comic book, they make him out to be a struggling stand-up comic who he wants to make it big, but he clearly isn't very good at his job. He has this one line of about standing in front of a crowd of people and having them not laugh. And, if you're a comedian and people aren't laughing at you, then you're probably not a very good comedian. I know that feeling right now, probably, as you go along, not laughing at me. Or maybe you're laughing your head off. But I think the key is that for the Joker in this story, he is an expectant father. His wife is pregnant, and oh my God, a sports alert just came through. Stephen A. Smith says something embarrassing. Anyway, so the Joker is an expectant father. His wife is going to have a child very soon. They live in this dilapidated apartment somewhere in Gotham City, and in order to make ends meet, he decides to turn to a brief life of crime. And this is where the movie, or the origin of the Joker, really starts to fall apart for me, is that he just kind of decides to start being a criminal as a whim. He meets up with these mob guys and says, hey, or he's going to meet with these guys that he's agreed to get them. I guess the Joker used to work at some factory, and he knows how to get in, and whatever they need at the factory, he knows how to get to. So he's just basically a guide for these thugs. And this is, like I said, this is where things start to fall apart, because the Joker has never been a bad person. He's just a terrible comic. And the very first chance he gets, He agrees to help these guys. They're on board with him, but they're clearly using him the whole way. And then the day of their job, where they're going to break into this factory, the Joker finds out that his wife and child have died in some kind of accident. And then this is where, for me, the story really falls apart, because he's everything that he was working for is gone, and then he still decides to go through with this crime. And while they're doing the crime, which is just go to factory, I don't even know what these guys were looking for. It's not clear, and it's not really important, I guess. But while they're in the factory, Batman shows up to stop the robbery, and the Joker accidentally falls into this vat of acid, washes out into the spillway, and he comes out and his skin is bleached white, his hair is crazy green, and he just starts laughing crazy. The chemicals made him go mad, on top of everything that had happened to him over the course of the day. It's a cheap and easy origin story for what should be a very complicated character. There's a lot of, and like I said earlier, there's a lot of interpretation of everything that's happened, and that's something that the movie leaves out. I also think that Mark Hamill's voice acting was just not very good. When he's the Joker, he's great, but when he's trying to be just the regular guy pre-Joker, he just is like a whiny little wimp. Whenever I read the book, I read it as like a strong man who's just failing, and in these moments with his wife, he's kind of letting his guard down. Like he's kind of a wienery kind of a dude, but like when he's talking to his wife, he just kind of complains. But when you hear his voice in the movie, it just sounds like he's just a whiny little weaky guy. It sounds like the Joker's doing an impression of a regular person, which I think is a waste. It's not effective. So that's all I got to say about that part of the movie. Finally, on to the conclusion. So Batman tracks down the Joker inside, of course, the abandoned amusement park. Could be haunted, I don't know. But he tracks down Batman, and Batman tracks down the Joker, rescues Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon says to bring him in by the book. Him and the Joker have a fight, and the Batman wins. And while the police are still on their way to bring the Joker back to Arkham, Batman finally gets to have his heart-to-heart, I guess, conversation with the Joker. And it's a very good exchange that does not come across in the movie the way it does in the book. And I think part of the reason also plays back through the rest of the movie is that at one point while I was watching the movie, I got the graphic novel out and was flipping through it, flipping through it while I was watching it. And the movie changes lines here and there, and changes word orders here and there. And in some places it works, but many times it just does not work. It really, in a story like this, that's very quick and very brief, it felt like they were cutting corners on lines and not making the changes that they need to and where. I know that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but and I don't have a specific example. I'm not going to go get the book and read it right here, but if you wanted to watch the movie and read the book while you're going along, you realize that the book, the way the language goes in the book, flows so much better than it does in the movie. It sounds so much more natural, sounds just overall more appealing to hear, even if you're reading it. But the conclusion of the movie has Batman and the Joker talking and saying to the Joker, I don't want to fight you forever. One of us is going to end up dying, and I don't want that. I don't want one of us to die. I don't want you to die. I don't want me to die. Let me help you. And the Joker says, no, it's too late for me. I've done too much, and at this point, I really don't want to. I accept who I am, and this is just the way it is. And then he proceeds to tell Batman a joke that the whole story, I guess the whole interchange reminds him of. And it's, just a kind of a lame joke. I like it, but that's to be expected. But oh, my friend Christy's friends had triplets this morning. That's very cute. Congratulations, Christy's friends. So anyway, I'm just going to keep reading the notifications I get while we're talking. But so the Joker tells this terrible joke, right. So he tells this terrible joke, and this is where another one of those strange interpretation things happen between many people who read the actual story of the book. For instance, the end of the story, the Joker finishes his joke and he starts laughing. And I always pictured, like, reading along with the comments, that Batman starts laughing too. That the Joker told a pretty, like a lame but pretty good joke, and it got Batman. So they both start laughing. They share a moment, and it, like, the joke, works, and it gets even Batman. The Joker finally was able to tell a joke and make his audience laugh, and Batman is the Joker's ultimate audience. Everything he does is for Batman, and he makes him laugh. But many people interpret the end of The Killing Joke as the Batman kills the Joker. The Joker tells this joke after everything that he's done to the Gordon family and throughout his crime career, and he ends everything with this terrible joke, and it finally pushes Batman over the edge, and he strangles the Joker while he laughs in his face, finally showing that the Joker was right, that anybody can be ruined by a bad day. The Batman lost his lover, his good friend Commissioner Gordon has been like emotionally and physically destroyed, and the Batman thinks he has everything together until this last moment when he realizes that no matter what he does, this man will never stop, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care to the point where he's going to be telling jokes right in his face after everything he's done earlier today. I disagree with that assessment, but I like it. I think it works. And that's one of the things that's so great about this story, is that you can interpret things so differently between two completely different views, and both stories are very complete. Both however you want to interpret it works very well. Each page still leads to the next page, and all the pieces work together to create a very coherent, very enjoyable, and ultimately satisfying story. And I think that's one of the big things that just doesn't work for the movie, is that when you hear Batman laugh at the end of the story, at the end of the movie, that he is laughing. He's not angry at the Joker in such a way that he's going to strangle him to death before the police get there. That he's laughing, which even though I never interpreted that until this movie came out earlier last year. But I can see how, if you had thought the Batman killed the Joker at the end of this story the whole time, and then you just hear the Batman laughing, how disjointed that would feel. But even for me, hearing the Batman laugh, Kevin Conroy's fake laugh is just terrible. Again, it comes back to the voice acting, which just isn't very good. The Batman just goes, ha, 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 ha. And, it's really bad. But that's The Killing Joke. I don't really have too much more to add. I'm sure as soon as I turn the microphone off, I'll think of a bunch of more stuff to add. I mean, I could start reading the Wikipedia or the IMDb page for this, but I think I got my point across. Sorry if I felt a little distracted, or if I was saying and a lot of pauses, but I've never done a solo show of this length before. We did one not too long ago, and I think it was 10 minutes, and that felt like an eternity. This feels like an unbelievable amount of time to be talking by myself, but I have had a nice time. If you're interested in hearing more longer explorations of movies that we saw, let us know, because this was kind of fun. Most of the time we spend just a few minutes on a movie, and it was really neat to kind of really break down this movie more so than what we normally do. So yeah, sorry. So that's me being distracted and trying to think of what I'm going to say next before I've said what I'm going to say. But again, this was This Week in Film. Check us out at thisweekinfilm.com. Matt will be back next week, and we'll have some new special guests. If you're listening to us or not a new special guest, maybe some new regular hosts. Got to fill that big void left by Ray. But if you're listening to us on the Podcast Radio Network, thank you very much for tuning in. You can find us here every week at this time, and check us out at thisweekinfilm.com. Find us on SoundCloud, all your favorite social media and or podcast app. Please give us a review or like us, subscribe, whatever all that stuff is. Rate, review, subscribe. That's the saying on all that stuff. And I think that's gonna do it. It feels weird to say that's the end of the reel because no one's here to roll their eyes at me. But if that's the end of the reel, we'll see you next week in film.